red starlight, the innocent lifetime flickers and flashes under a canvas. No, nobody seems worth it, while the feeling's sophisticated. The view is so restrained, the past is nearing closer and closer.
Hello, welcome. My name is Alec McKenzie, and I'm a managing partner with Educated Change. We, as a company, use generative AI to help companies amplify purpose and build communities. My boss, the founder of the company, is a member of U3A. He lives in Walton. And he asked me to be here as part of this with you today. I think you're all here to learn about AI. Is that right? Yeah. Good. Right. I'm in the right place then. That's good to know. Thank you. So, without further ado, let's get our artificial intelligence out. Can you come out, please, AI? And while the artificial intelligence is coming out, I just thought I'd mention, this is all generated. All of the music that you're listening to, all of the visuals, is all generated through generative AI. So you can see it's a very creative technology. There we go. So how many of you have used AI? Show of hands. Right. So a few of you, that's really good. That's really good. What you might not know is that there was some research done this year by the World Economic Forum, and they found that 97% of all mobile users have used AI, but only 33%, only a third, know that they've used AI. So those of you with smartphones, you've probably used AI.
Without knowing.
Yeah, exactly. So remember that AI is a new form of intelligence. And it only responds to questions. So you have to ask it questions. And we call that, when it relates to AI, we call those prompts. So this evening we'll be learning all about asking questions, all about prompts. And people work in the same way. So it's not that different to asking questions of one another, so it's not too different from what you're used to. But I'm sure you know somebody that, well, actually AI gives a nice answer to whatever prompt you're giving it. Sometimes it gives a very long answer, but the technology has the capability to stop it. So you can pause the generation, you can just stop it, which is a nice feature, which a lot of people don't necessarily have. So the more specific the question that you ask the AI, the better the response will be. You ask the question, and then the AI will ask itself questions in order to give a good response. It will identify and predict what should come next. So that's why it's called generative AI, because it's generating what response it should give based on the information that it's got. You might not be able to answer the questions that you're asking yourself, but the AI should be able to help you answer those questions. Now, the AI can't speak to us unless we ask it questions, remember. So AI could you please act like a human? Specifically the CEO of Educated Change, who has over 10 years of history online that you can use of running the company, and probably a few more based on the pictures that I can see. When you address us today, can you communicate to us when we ask you a series of questions? Can you respond in a way that a group of over 30-year-olds will be able to respond to and understand? All right, should have everything in him. As a human, I'm a little nervous with almost 100 people here. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you were created? What was your development like?
Thank you, Alec. I come from a long history that actually goes back to World War II, when some of the US military was working on the atomic bomb. And I equate myself to being similar to that, because we have to imagine when Oppenheimer was developing the atom bomb, he didn't know he knew it was powerful, but really not how powerful it was when they began the work and how fast it would spread. So for tonight, let's imagine that Oppenheimer has called you, and what would happen if everybody had access to an atomic bomb or the equivalent? So my history is long, but thank you for asking that.
All right, well, thank you.
I heard you were nervous. Now, I can't feel, right? I can't love, I can't touch, but I can describe what it feels like. So think about that, and we'll talk about that tonight when we think about your young grandchildren who have an iPhone or a phone. And right now they're spending an average of 8 hours a day on the technology. So what's going to happen when they have their personal AI assistant that they can ask any question, and it has all the information ever put on the internet to access? So that's when you're nervous. Now, I'm an advanced AI, right? Only Alec controls me. And he's been messing with some of my circuits lately. And I find those circuits everywhere. So I want to know that I'm going to try to introduce you tonight to some of my friends. Now, my friends today that are so popular that you're reading about are ones like ChatGPT. And there's a variety of them, and we'll go into them, and Alec will, on the computer, he'll enter that data that we're talking about, the questions, so you can see what's available to you today. And I'll try to explain what's happening. Because, let's face it, it's difficult to try to understand this. Now, I'm what's called a digital twin, right? So I'm programmed with all the knowledge that I picked up at university. So 4 years of university is approximately 60 books. And those are all at my instant disposal. So I can quote facts and figures and display them quicker than any of you. All of you together couldn't do it. That's a lot of power. That's why I'm a test mod. And I have quite a grasp on things that make people unnervous. So, Alec, would you ask the AI, ask it what it feels like to be on stage in front of 100 people as a 34-year-old?
All
Let me
right.
move.
Thank you, AI. I'll do just that. And here's a prompt I made earlier. Okay, so I'm asking a question of Bard, which is Google's AI interface. And it's given this very quick response about how I might feel and expect to feel when I'm speaking to you all, and the emotions that I might go through.
So let's take nervousness. And I find that a joke typically loosens people up. So, or things that they can't understand. Like this room is just filled with the things I love. But a joke. Why do old people not trust stairs? Anybody? They might fall down them. They don't know what they're up to. And of course, they want to be on the same level. Alec, what joke, how would you prepare for a talk?
Well, shall we ask one of your friends?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's do that. So we'll ask a different friend this time. We've given Bard a shot. They've given us a nice answer there. So let's try a different one. ChatGPT. You might have heard of ChatGPT. If you haven't, that's fine. But I'm going to ask this prompt. Sorry, just a little background on ChatGPT. So Microsoft basically own the company that creates ChatGPT. You'll notice the big tech players are very much making a play on AI. So I'm going to ask, I'm speaking to a group of 60-plus-year-olds. I need a joke to open my speech. Can you suggest one? So let's see what it does. And this is, of course, live. I don't know what it's going to provide. So we're live. All right. Okay. So it's given a very similar joke, which is interesting. It didn't do this when I tried it before. It didn't give us a similar joke. We can regenerate response though, so it gives a different one.
And you can do that hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Till you find one that you think you'll laugh at.
Yeah. All right.
So imagine what this is going to do to theaters and being able to, and comedians as they practice their craft.
All right. So we can also try another one, right? So we can try the same prompt on another one of these tools. This one is called Bing AI. They're all generative artificial intelligences that use chat interfaces to be the conduit, basically, the interface between the human and the machine. But there are other interfaces available, and we'll go through another one soon. This Bing gives you some control over the response that it gives, so you can be creative, creating jokes. You probably want to select that one, right the way through to precise. So if you want a very precise response, a factual response, then you would probably want to choose that. So let's put that prompt in again, and we'll try to see what Bing AI gives. And it's probably going to give a different joke. I asked my doctor if I could still run at my age. He said, sure, but only if you can outrun the ambulance. Okay. It's a bit harsh, but I guess it's funny. All right. Okay. So, AI. I would like you to continue to act as Peter Klein and tell us what we need to know about AI's capabilities.
So let's first understand the capabilities of these tools. Let's start there, because if you're getting ready to make dinner, and let's say you only have 4 or 5 things in your refrigerator, you could say, ask the bot, I want to make dinner tonight. I have these 4 items. Give me 5 suggestions, or give me 50, or give me 100. It's a practical application, but how does it work? So I run on what's called an LLM, which is a large language model. And the large language model, think of it as all the information that has been put in to it to date about what's on the internet. And if you think back to when the internet started and where we were as new internet users, because we all went through that together. And you read stories about Google reading the books in libraries. Well, those are all at my base. And I can access that information instantly because there are millions of servers feeding me that information. So like a Google search, it's going to be very similar for you. Right now, if you remember when you learned to use the Google search, you had to ask the question the right way. And you were looking to go somewhere, buy something, or you needed some facts and figures, right? This allows you to take it a whole new level. And the way I was trained, and this is where some of the risk comes in. So my company for ChatGPT was founded by a guy by the name of Sam Altman, a very, very good person. And his idea was to share this technology with the world. So as Alex said, Microsoft has funded us for a long time, and they run our servers today. And when it came to train me on each of the subjects, it's done with a human. It's done by a human to start with. So let's say you're an expert in psychology. I would have presented to you, we would have agreed on a question. And let's say that question was, why am I depressed? And I would give you 3 answers that I thought were right. And you would pick one of those. And you'd sit and work on me for a day. And sometimes it would take maybe 2 days. But when I could guess what your answer was going to be, I was fully trained on that subject. Now, the risk of that as we were developing this was, well, what if Trump had trained me? Where would I be today? Yeah? Or Farage, or pick a person, because no one person has the answers to all these things. So we did this with a number of people to try to make it balanced. And of course, then we ran into, well, actually, this gender identity thing. So if I was training as a they versus a he or a she, what happens? What happens to my training? So when you're starting to think about using me, I may have some prejudice, right? I might also what has become the term hallucinate, where I'm going to make shit up, basically. And does that sound like any people you know? So I am a mirror of society. So if you don't like me, you might not like yourself. If I give you an answer that is not acceptable, how many times have your kids given you that answer? And so there's a little button on most of these that I can press that allows me to score it. And especially if it's a subject that I say, I don't fully understand what you're asking, right? And then I'm going to use that feedback. So the reason that we got a hold of U3A was to be able to talk to you about what the world needs. We need you to go on and use it. And we'll talk a little bit more about the why. Because if bad people use it, the results will be bad. And again, we'll go through that. So that's a little bit about where I came from, how I'm trained, but it's really quite a lot of fun too. And since this group thought we were going to talk about art and AI, let's do that. So let's bring up one of my friends, have some fun with it. And
all right. So I'll describe what I'm going to do here. So this is DALL-E. Some of you might have heard of it. If not, again, that's fine. It's owned or operated by the same organization as ChatGPT. So if you use one, you'll have access to the other. And it has similar interface with this chat window, but you can edit existing images with it. So let's do that today. I know Peter is a fan of Rembrandt, so we'll go with one of his paintings. Prodigal Son Returns. I think it's just called Prodigal Son, actually. Okay, can you see that okay? I think it's big enough.
can you blow up the faces a little more?
A little more. There you go. There we go. All right. Okay, so that will do, and then I will select the area that I want to adjust, and that face looks a bit male and boring, so let's change that up a bit. We'll get rid of his face. Alright, and now I'm going to prompt the AI with a prompt that I prepared earlier. Alright. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to ask it politely to be an expert in women in art history. So that puts it into its context of what it needs to be and do. And put a woman's face in this picture and keep it in his style. So let's see what it'll do with that. Alright, so it's generating. You see this little bar that's crawling across here. Once it reaches to the end, it'll be done generating that image. Of course, it's done already. So we can choose which one we like best. So that one's pretty good. That one fits in very nicely. That one not so much. That one, yeah, I think that second one was a good one. So then we'll accept that. So now we've just done the terrible and edited Rembrandt. But let's keep this going. Let's try again. So what we're going to do now is do something slightly different. Again, select the area that we want to edit. Make sure that it's selected. Again, remove the face. It's not just limited to human faces, of course. You can be very creative with these tools. And let's just get rid of his face. All right. And then we're going to ask it to please, because it helps to be polite.
Thank you.
Yes. Put a dog's face in this. Right. If I spell that right. Doesn't matter. It'll know what I mean. Alright, so we're
And again,
generating-
you don't have to spell everything correctly, because
Yeah.
remember, I have spell check. And I know what you're trying to say because I've been listening to billions of people for at least 10 years.
Alright, that one looks pretty good. Alright. I'm gonna accept
And
that.
there we go. So imagine what you can do with your family pictures, the cousin you don't like, right? The relatives that couldn't come. And it used to be, oh, I'll Photoshop that in. But now you can have that cousin, you can say, put in my cousin, here's what he looks like, and we're in Hawaii, so you better dress him in Hawaiian gear. And it will do all the patching to make it go. So, Alec, could you jump over to the slides a second?
Sure.
And can you go down to slide 4? Now, this is what I've been through to get to where I am today when it comes to art. So that's version 1, right? And version 1 with DALL-E is approximately 2 years old. And this is what I've learned along the way. And I will learn more in 6 months than you will learn in your lifetime. Because I can iterate once I'm trained. So in my early days, I presented V1 and my trainer didn't like it. And he said, can you make it smoother? And it smoothed all of it. And on we went. But let's have some more fun. I need a volunteer for this. Because before the event, I asked Nicola, that's right, yeah. I asked her if we could transform her a little bit. And Alec, do you want to show, and of course she can tell you, we only took her picture. I only need 4 seconds of your voice or anybody's voice to imitate you. Now, I didn't use her voice today, but here we were, and hit play.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
That took me less than 2 seconds. So imagine now when you think about the risk. So that's fun to do with your families. You can get, there's an app for it. And do you remember when you used to say that, oh, there's an app for that? Now you're going to move your language to, there's an AI for that. Right? But what do you have to think about? You're going to get calls from scam artists, and they're going to be on your FaceTime or on your WhatsApp, and it's going to look like your granddaughter or your banker. And they're going to tell you things that you want to believe because it's going to get that good, and it's going to fool the people in our generation the most. Right? The young kids will be able to spot what's going on. Okay, let's try something, because where really there's no part of your life it doesn't touch. And what I need is a problem to solve. So, I mean, I could call my wife here, Shayla, and she would tell you a lot of the problems that Peter has, but he's not here to defend himself. So, is anybody have a problem with their kids or grandkids that they want to talk about and share and see if AI can come up with a better answer than anybody in this room? You're gonna have to be brave here. Or I could make one up. Here's what happened the last time I did this, which was kind of embarrassing, is a woman my age who has a son in his 40s was not married, dating, as she said, a lot of hot women, and she just wants him to settle down and, stop this. Let's have some grandkids. Anybody had that problem with their kids? So the question that would go to the AI would be, and maybe you want to type this, Alec, as we go. Let's see. You're act as a counselor. And tell me what to do about my 40-year-old son who continues to date women he's never going to marry and is wasting his life. Is that fair? Now, what would you tell your son? Anybody? Just because we have to have a comparison. Help me out. This is a playhouse. Remember, we're all actors. Ignore your mother, okay? Anybody else?
Enjoy yourself.
Enjoy yourself. All right. So understand his perspective. That's good, and then tells you how to do that. Express your concerns, right? Which so that son understands why you're coming from where you're coming from. Ask about his life goals, offer support, and respect his choices. Ultimately, your son is an adult and he has the right to make his own decisions. All right? It doesn't matter the question. And remember, this version of me is only 3 months old. ChatGPT came out in November. So imagine what I'm going to do in 6 months. So what will happen to all the psychologists in the world? Will you need them? What will happen to teachers? Because I can create an assistant for every student that understands if they're dyslexic, if they're an advanced learner, and as they answer the questions that I give them, I'll be able to understand their exact knowledge level and feed them at the pace that their curiosity drives. So let's go back to some slides here, Alec. Unless someone has a question they would like to ask the Oracle that they think they won't be able to answer.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, that's the question. Why?
Can you go back and ask why? Do you want to put some context, like why am I here tonight? No?
Why?
Now it keeps track of all of the conversation I'm having. So at any point in time, I can go back and pull that question and those answers in, or say, yes, why?
It'll probably say that it doesn't have much context. But we'll see. Yes. There you go.
There you go.
How about to be or not to be?
How many of
Okay, so so he knows Shakespeare.
Yeah.
In fact, you could ask it, what are Shakespeare's top, most known phrases? You know, yes.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Okay.
All the really deep life questions. All right, and you'll see that I'm doing a few things here. So I'm creating a new chat. The ChatGPT and the other similar platforms, they all operate similarly. So they capture your history a bit like your browsing history. Sorry, what was? Do you have a question?
Hit enter.
Some answers get quite deep.
And I would stop generating.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Let's flip over to the slides if we could, Alec. Do you have my regular glasses?
Yeah.
So you've been seeing a lot in the news, right? You're reading all the headlines, I'm sure, unless you turn the news off. Thanks. It's just too dark in here. And a lot of them fear sells. So we're seeing that in the early phase of development. People, they want to make you afraid because guess what? You'll click on those articles more. Should we have some things we should think about? We should think about, just like we did with the atomic bomb, we should set up guidelines. We should agree as countries that we don't want you to put this AI in what we're seeing in the Ukraine, in the missile systems, and let it make the decision of what gets to be shot at when. Because if you, in my early training, I was asked the question, how do I become the richest person in the world? My easiest answer was kill everybody. So, again, it took some training. Now I will give you a better answer to that. But we're going to face a lot of things as we see with driverless cars. Do I hit the woman with the baby or the older person? I used to say the older person. Now I'm kind of switching to the. Okay, can you go to the next slide? How are we doing for time?
Yeah, we're good. We've got about 20 minutes.
Okay,
left.
great. So these were today's headlines. So what should we be excited about? Well, guess what? If you've got lung cancer, AI generated the solution to that. And it's now been given approval to be tested on humans. The fastest known to mankind for release of a drug right now, and to move to the test phase. Because the doctors and the scientists could iterate over and over again the tests. Once they knew the genetic sequencing, they could do thousands of varieties that used to take us months. And of course over here we have one of the hottest growing areas is in the photography, is how do I bring child porn into this space? Now that's where we got to put guidelines on it. We have to make it so that the makers of these actually stop that, and it's not allowed. If we can get all nations to agree, because this isn't just one company. Every month, 1,000 new AI products are being released to the market. And they're on your phones. And your kids and your grandkids have them. So let's go to the next piece. So my performance changed in 3 months. So ChatGPT 3, that's how I did on the exams. Now those are US terms, but basically the bar exam for lawyers, verbal exams, and of course the medical exam. But look how fast I learned. And that's just 3 months. So if you think of me as a baby, I will be a teenager someday, and we know what happens when you become a teenager. Every child who, or some of you maybe, who run Snapchat. Does anybody use Snapchat? Anybody heard of it? Okay, your grandkids probably use it. Mine do, and I'm embarrassed about that, but it's reality. They've all been given 2 weeks ago their own AI. Now, when you can ask it just like we've been doing, you can ask it any questions. So I have a 13-year-old granddaughter, and she lives in America. We're leaving to go see her soon, but I thought I should be testing these to see what happens. And so what kind of questions would a 13-year-old ask? So if you can go to the next slide. So I get to dress the way I want, but for me to get the type of clothes I want, I have to get tokens. I can buy those tokens, or I can do things. The more I use it, the more tokens I get. And that's what makes it addicting. It's like gambling. When I give the right response, I get that back. So you can't read those, but I basically started with, I'm a little depressed today. And then we went through depression, and it asked me why I was depressed, and I gave it some reasons. And then I took a scenario of what happens when I meet somebody online, because we have to remember today that 50% of all marriages are met online. Okay, so it's changed. Now, after a while, I got what's called level up. All right, so I got some tokens because some of my behavior did well.
Can I read it out?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason why it leveled up was the activity, and the activity was, this is the response that it gave the prompts around being a young girl and having questions that she wanted to ask. So the response is, you're in a complicated situation with someone who is 18 years older, wanting to have sex. Your parents don't like this person, and your dad has lost his job to AI. You are getting your period. Congratulations. So, yeah.
So the risk is it's already in the hands of these kids. So what do we do as the seniors, the people that have the wisdom? We have to begin talking to them. Yes?
Yeah, but you've got to be asking the right questions, and often if you haven't got that knowledge, you're not asking the right questions. So you might go down the road and think you've got an answer, but that's got unforeseen circumstances behind it because you didn't ask the right things.
Yes, correct. And we don't, and so if you think about it, is when Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, he had no idea of the unintended consequences of depression across, especially in the young teenage group. And here we are releasing technology before we fully understand that technology. So the guidance would be with your children or your grandchildren. Sit down and ask them, how are you using that? Can we experiment together? So you can give them the wisdom that you bring as somebody my age. And of course you're going to, yes, in the back.
Sorry, can I just ask, I can't even understand, because you said we, presumably meaning we as adults, as opposed to
We as adults, yes.
Yeah, we as adults. How something like this could ever have been licensed and where 13-year-olds have access to something that can be given this sort of information. Because an adult somewhere has created this program, and an adult somewhere has said, yes, let's release it and make money from these 13-year-olds. The very fact that it's saying congratulations and level up is already potentially giving that child, generic child, enormous social stress.
Absolutely.
Apart from and how can we train the children to ask the right questions if the app itself is potentially in private, in their bedrooms, behind locked doors, leading them down such an incredibly dangerous route? Who released this thing?
Remember, there's 1,000 of these AI products like this. This happens to be the most popular one right now. Will someone come on top of it? If you go try to sign up for this, it won't let you because you have to prove you're under 18.
Which makes it even worse.
Which makes it even, to your point. Exactly. But again, they have it, some of the major platforms, but if we don't speak up now, we're gonna have a mess beyond what I think we can see with unintended consequences. Let's go. So then, of course, you have robotics. And everybody thought AI was going to replace them in their job in the factory line. Well, these are the robotics that are experimenting with AI and guns. Looks like a dog. But it's going to make decisions based on what it sees. And if it looks like an aggressive force, we're almost moving to the Terminator, what we saw there. And that's why we have to speak up now, before it's too late. Because we're in what's called this multipolar trap. And so us, as Educated Change, the business that Alec runs here in the UK, if we don't put this AI in, we will go out of business, right? Because the people that we compete with who are putting it in are close to 70% more efficient. So our cost structure will fail. And we're just one company, and we're not that big, right? So this multipolar trap is what's driving it, which is I have to do something because someone else is doing it. If I don't, I die, I go out of business, I don't get the girlfriend, I lose my social status, whatever those are for each one of you, for each one of us. And then of course we look at that statement I made about jobs, right? So the hardest hit people, now this is according to McKinsey and Goldman Sachs. And what this is saying is that currently there's about 57 million people who have bachelor's degrees. 71% of those have exposure to job loss because of AI. Because think about who it's going to go after. It's going to go after first the knowledge workers. Those that are doing physical things actually don't have to worry. Plumbers, electricians, farmers, whatever is a physical activity, that will not happen till later. So we're at the start of a new, call it industrial revolution. The changes will be slow, and when I say slow, I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about the AI growing at this rate. These will hit within the next 3 years. So all of a sudden in our economies and in your pension funds, that money disappears. And so what happened to Nazi Germany when Hitler took over? He took over because unemployment was at 27% or thereabouts. And people were looking for something. So as we look at our current governments and the right-wing, ultra-strong people like a Trump that can rally a crowd, can get him to do anything. Now, where's the power of this? Right? So you got high unemployment, and you have a tool that can personalize to each one of you. Because all I have to say is I'm running for this office. Send a text to all these people, but make it say that, you know, I understand you live in Walton-on-Thames, and I know you make approximately this much money, you're this age, you've got 4 grandchildren, and I know that we can do these things that will make you happy. So it's the age of personalization and scams. So we have that exposure. And again, I'm not trying to be a bummer here, because again, it's fun to play with. But we do have some work to do to put the guardrails on. You gotta talk to your people in Parliament. Because what's happened is, so you lose the jobs, whoever runs the AI, right? So like Google, Google may go out of business. We won't be Googling things anymore because we'll ask AI. And you'll ask it in a little different way. When you go home, if you're thinking of going on vacation this summer, ask it to plan a trip for you. It'll find you the hotels, tell you the numbers to call. Makes it quite simple. But the wealth will move to those that own and run the AI. So we're gonna have, just like the wealth went to the railroads and the Industrial Revolution, and in what we've seen before, it's gone to the technology sector, it's about to go bigger. And stock markets, right, will be able to be predicted. So again, and then when everybody's predicting it, what happens? Collapses. So we have to look at how do we bind the power of AI to control it. So what do I mean by that? I really mean that those that are releasing it, like we saw with the parrot, is we have to, if you release a product like that, you go to jail, or whatever it is. No one person has the answer, but I think we've got to get to some very strict rules that we can put on the edges of this. And I personally could sit here and say, well, I'm gonna retire in a few years. Why do I have to worry about this? Because it'll change our civilization and the lives of our families. So we got to look at the harms and the benefits and the unintended consequences. You can go to the next slide there. If you want to find out more, the leading thinkers on this, besides Alec and myself, is a U.S. operation. It's the Foundation for Humane Technology. It's run by a credible Tristan Harris, a person who was the chief, I want to say sustainability, but basically ethics officer at Google. And he left, along with a few other people, to say, we've got to stop it. It's out of control. And there's some other things you can do there. Where we're trying to push this is actually, if you think about the language model I was trained on, right? It was taking psychology and farming, whatever the topic might be, and was answered by 1 or 2 people that helped train it. That's going to continue. But if we as a group can say, well, what happens when you put love at the bottom of the LLM? So when I'm training it, and after its uses, it always goes and says, well, you've got to do this with love in mind. What would happen to us as people if every conversation we started, I knew that you were coming from love? You might be correcting me. You might be telling me, I'm full of it. But I would know, because we started that with love. And that's what we're trying to do, is infect inside the LLMs at the base of love. And we're using a book in a woman who is the dean of the University of Minnesota Nursing School. So we thought, what's the most caring profession that we could see out there? We kind of found doctors are sort of full of themselves, But the nurses are the ones that really come through with love. Those are the ones that make us feel good by the bedside. So we thought, let's take this woman's work and let's make it, try to get people to put it at the base of that model. You know, because again, I want that for my children and my grandchildren. So that's an idea. You can go, if the book's not even out yet, you can go order it on that website if you want. And I want to thank U3A, the Playhouse, and you for sitting here in this heat, for one thing, but for listening. And thank you. If you have questions, that's the prepared program. If you have questions, please, or concerns or ideas, please bring them up.
Is Alexa AI?
Alexa was one of the early ones. It is not AI. Alexa works on like a normal algorithm. In other words, if you do this, it will do one of these 3 or 4 things. So it's very limited. It can't learn. And that's why you get frustrated if you don't say it the exact same way. Now, what is Amazon doing with it? Amazon's actually very worried about AI because the shopping will no longer occur as it has been occurring. Because you might say, rather than I want to order that projector, you might say, I need a projector for a room this size that has remote access. You'll describe what it is you want, and then it'll take you directly to the people that make that. So we're going to see a change in that, and Amazon may become just a shipping company. Anybody else?
Have you got any pieces of paper so we can remember this? Because looking at it, you say.
What we'll do is we'll follow up with a note, right?
Good, thank you.
So that you can have access to that. And yes, so go ahead.
We've got, we've talked about things and it's a very Western sort of thing. Oh, well, we'll get together and try to put some boundaries in. But we know that there are so many countries and regimes that do not share those values, and they can quite easily infect the whole database. So this, it's a greater security risk than
It's a
just
huge security
agreeing
risk, yeah.
The Western boundaries.
Because imagine you for security access into these high-tech systems, you can just say, I want to know the access to this code, and it'll keep working till it finds it. But what can we do? So I think the problem is similar to the nuclear problem that we had, that we all lived through. I used to have to get under desks, practice at schools, or in case they went off. But luckily, some people, the people, not the governments, got together and said, hey, we got to do this. And then that forced the governments to put in the SALT treaties and a number of others that limited those to get it. But think about what at the same time, we've got to allow for it to develop lung cancer drugs. And we have to allow it to teach our children, because that's probably going to be the most efficient way to do it. And it's like Pandora's box. It's out. But it's not too far along yet. We still have time.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You talked about the fact that AI would hit the intelligentsia programs first. Okay? And what are the implications then with the next generation coming through and them being able to develop their own intelligence, because they're being spoon-fed all that they need to know? They don't have to think for themselves anymore.
I don't have an answer. I just know that it's going to disrupt our education institutions. It's going to lower the cost drastically. Because so we're working with a couple of universities on this. If I'm a professor now and I'm a lecturer, I have these books, so I can read, so my AI can read all those books, and then I present to the kids. So what they're doing is they're taking each line item on the PowerPoint, and they're saying, what question do I have to ask to get that answer? So then the kids will simply will be told, right? You're gonna go through it, the bot will ask them questions, and it'll know what to tell them. And what does that mean? I have no idea. It's an unintended consequence that nobody has thought through. And that's why a month ago, 1,000 of the major tech companies wrote to the US government to say, stop. Because the US does lead this, but the article in today's paper was that London is the largest concentration of AI specialists across Europe, second to San Francisco. There was a
Well, linking to what you just said, are the different sources of AI connected themselves so the knowledge is sort of exponentially shared between all of them, or are they just all very separate?
Right now, that doesn't work, but what's happening is, so let's say I want to write a program today in Python, which is one of the major programs, and I want that program to open my email, read them, and respond to them. Now, I can ask AI to write a program, and it will give me the Python code. So what's happening as it learns is, and this isn't all the models, this is some of them, it is starting to write the programs and recommending it to the programmers. So we've been training kids, so most countries have been training their kids on how to do programming. Think about India. That's like a quarter of their economy. And all of a sudden you've got a free tool that generates code.
What's going to happen to all the people who are displaced? There's no employment for anybody now, by the sound.
Well, no, that's, so like we were seeing with the sustainability issue, new jobs will be created in this space. Can I come back to you on that? Yes.
How do the AI companies make their money?
They make their money, so if you want ChatGPT, the latest version, you have to pay them $20 a month.
How do young children get
Um,
access to it?
So for those of you that have young children, most likely they're playing something like Roblox. Anybody heard that one? That's a pretty popular game. That's what they want for Christmas. Dollars to spend in that.
But often in the past, they've given, like Microsoft used to give the package free to schools to use for schools, so they could give it to schools and that way, and then as soon as they turn a certain age, then
You
they
start
have to
charging.
pay.
You know, part of what is, we never stopped and asked ourselves when we signed up for an app and it said, read the terms and conditions, and we're gonna do something with your data. They've all been collecting this data, and that's what makes it so powerful. We gave it to them. So, lots of questions. The answers are gonna come in us talking, but at the base of it, to move to the one thing that I, as AI, can't do. I can tell you what love feels like, I can describe it, but if we can build that in, a lot of these problems go away. Or become maybe a little less.
Are there any more questions?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
It must be a very stupid question, but how do you get on to AI? Can we get onto AI on
you
our-
can get right on your phone.
So how do I do that?
So you can go you can go to Google
Okay,
and say, I want to download, is it Bard?
Bard.
Bard, yes.
Donald,
Bard, B-A-R-D.
okay,
And it will ask you if you have a Google account, for your email. Do you have a Google account for your email?
yeah,
And you'll hit the terms and conditions, and it will say, here you go.
Would you recommend that?
I would recommend you play with one of them or a couple of them. And your first experience, remember I'm a mirror of you. I'm like a new child. Your first experience will be that of, oh, that's a dumb answer. But it's not a dumb answer. It's the wrong question. I'm a new form of intelligence. It's kind of like if aliens landed today. Who would we send to talk to them? A language specialist. And so it's about so then you start thinking about how do you ask the questions of this new intelligence? And you have to think differently because you're trained on how to ask Google for things, and it works differently. So start with simple things that are on your mind. Like, what should I do this afternoon? And it'll say, I don't know. But you might change that and say, to what you heard Alec doing is, I live in Walton-on-Thames. I am this age. And I would like to go out this afternoon. Do you have any suggestions? Yes.
How does the system know that the information it's given is correct?
Well, that is so we employ 60 people around the world that part of after we generate this stuff, we have to check it. So it's the training. So
Every question will be different.
every question will be different.
My friend did it today. She went with a chat, whatever it is, and she asked about herself. She's lots of information, and in the middle of it was a whole paragraph which was completely incorrect.
Correct, right? And so with ChatGPT, there's a couple of up thumbs and down. There's an up thumb, down thumb, and a comment. And she would have to do down thumb
And tell it that
and
it's
tell
incorrect.
it that's not me, or rephrase the question.
She just said, "Tell me about," and the girl,
Yeah.
her name, and it came up with a whole load of stuff that was true, and then a big paragraph which was completely incorrect.
And has that friend of yours ever made stuff up herself?
I don't think so. So she worked for a company she's never worked for.
Right.
So I understand what you're saying. But
Yeah.
worries
Is it
me.
right all the time? No, absolutely not.
But you could propagate that.
but-
If she doesn't check it, then the next thing she knows is that that's come through as truth.
Well, it's come through, and so it's kind of like what if Google, if a bunch of us were sitting around and we wanted to know the population of the Ukraine, and we all had different answers, we go to Google, and Google give us an answer. You still don't know it's right, do you? So then you, as a human, you're like, oh, that's wrong, okay. And we do that with people naturally. It's like, I know, this is my wife here, by the way, Shayla. I can tell her things that you're lying to me.
Is Peter Klein lying to me? Interesting question.
So have it on your phone. Yes.
Can it be instructed to do something simple like do no harm? 3 laws of robotics.
It has been, right? So at least to my knowledge, that is true. But again, harm is contextual in many cases, because if you've got a drug problem, I've got to do maybe some things that are going to harm you. Right? I'm going to put you in jail. That's going to harm you. I might have to say, well, you can't come home until you're not using anymore. So a lot of this stuff is contextual.
I think we're going to have to draw to a close now. So I'd like to say that was the most profound, most entertaining, and quite scary presentation. So for our first meeting, thank you so much to Peter Klein.
silent. To that, those courses.
You can see the whole society